with ourselves, but with the residents, that we actually look at funding source, we actually look at the time for implementation for items when we put it, and I wanted to adopt something along those lines in the special rules. So when we submit an item, that we include the funding source or the potential funding source, and also a timeline for implementation when we present these items. So my motion was to adopt that through special rules.
I'll second it.
Just a quick question, Councilman Collazo, just because I know this has been brought up, this got brought up years ago also. The onus falls on the individual council member to kind of come up. Don't want them to spin their wheels, and the item's completely different by the time it gets, by the time we finish the discussion. It's like, so for, I'll give you an example. A brand new council member Alvarez wants to put up an item like he did before on Montrose. It is, how much would it be to do the project with a timeline? Folks were hesitant about it. Question really shifts. I mean, do we vote on it, or do we bring it back at a next council meeting as another new business item until we get it right? So yeah, just wanted to put that on your plate, because I know, and I gave that, I know you work with staff, but maybe when you get to the council it'll be different. Does he need to bring it back? And I just bring this up because we dealt with this, the vice mayor.
So to answer your question, Mayor, I put it into the actual memo because it can actually be by way of this discussion. Would help alleviate some of these concerns. My concern is when we pass stuff that doesn't necessarily have funding, and then the residents' expectation is, well, you passed it, when's it going to get done? And I think a good example is that street lighting. We passed a street lighting study. It's not necessarily funded. You know, the expectation of the residents is, well, when am I going to get more enhanced street lighting? Either through the actual, just so it can be part of our best practices. And if we adopt that as a best practice, I think that we're being more transparent with the residents as we transact business from this dais, and we're being honest with ourselves on when these things can happen. So
That's fine, as long as it doesn't hamstring intellectual ingenuity and innovation. I'm fine with it. I had the issue with it years ago because that's exactly what it would have done. It would have. I don't have an issue with it, Vice Mayor.
No, I understand what you're saying, Councilman, and again, the mayor made the point. You know, some of us don't have that budget expertise to find the funding, and that's what we have professional staff for. And that was one of the conflicts. Is you're absolutely right. There has to be a discussion with staff, and I think that maybe on those cost items that we vote on, it has to come to us in one meeting and say, oh, look, this is what we want to do. When the manager describes allocation, and find where it's going to go in the timeline of the plan. I just don't want, you know, for example, crossing areas at Fairway and Monrose, and now we have a big one on Miami Lakes Drive. We have a lot morning as I travel Miami Lakes Drive. They're just crossing because the red lights are so far apart there, 82nd Avenue and, you know, all the way to 79th. With the manager to find that funding after it's approved. I'd hate to do all that legwork prior to the item coming on the agenda, and then the council goes, it's not a good idea, and killing it after all the timeline, and then be putting it, be shot dead here because there was an idea that flowed. So, because, you know, it's a high ticket item, and they just hadn't gotten there yet with the manager. I think it's something we need to look at.
But you were saying it's a best practice. It's not going to be codified.
I wanted to outright say timeline to be determined or no timeline. I think it's a more transparent transaction of what we're doing up here with respect.
Mr. Mayor, briefly.
Councilman Rodriguez, Councilman Dieguez, and Councilman
Thank you,
Alvarez.
sir. I appreciate that. Councilman Collazo, I agree with you. I think this is a good item on the agenda. Come, do your research, sit with the manager. So I think the best practices is that if where the funding's coming from, and this is where there's a higher likelihood of it's gonna pass. So I think this is a great idea.
In my case, I think Jeff actually had it perfectly, you know, Councilman Rodriguez, which is, I agree that we should, the time that we propose the item, it's actually not a bad item, you know, and have a full time it gets presented. And as you said, can even help its chances of passage if we have more answers rather than more questions. So I will be in full support of the item.
Councilman Alvarez.
Three positives I take from this, Councilmember Collazo. One, like Councilmember Rodriguez mentioned, it ties us to doing our homework and researching and working with the town staff a little bit more in depth with our item. Two, agenda. It gives the town staff about 2 weeks to provide an update leading to the council meeting. And then the other positive is that, you know, we could have that information already disseminated in dialogue and discussion here at the council meeting. So I think it's a best practice. I think it helps us understand a little bit more what we're putting. Councilmember Collazo.
Any further discussion? None. All those in favor?
Aye.
My report on the Florida of cities. So I know the vice mayor was there also. I spent several days there. My first meeting was a symposium I invited to on homelessness. It was interesting because they talked about how even in middle class communities, how a lot of folks are just one paycheck away from being homeless, and they showed us some of those stats, and it was eye-opening. And they were talking about different ideas that some through a whole different process, helping them with down payments to their home, because that alone makes up a huge difference. So those stats were really eye-opening. Webs and widgets, focus on coding. They kept talking about focus on coding. That's really what's going to change and make sure that you're compliant. Is that the code on the website to that? Because there's a lot of, they were like, was innovation, especially in the workforce cities. One city that really impressed me, I had a long chat. We talked to the city manager from Altamont Springs, was showcasing what their city is doing. And I've talked to the manager and Tony about it. It's pretty amazing what's happening over there. They're a full service city, yet they don't have any unions, they don't have any issues, and their budget 30%. They were like, look, we've never in the history of Altamont Springs, we've never lowered or raised the millage. We kept it flat. We kept it exactly the same all these years. So every year that money would come in, we have zero debt, and they're doing new construction. I go, one thing they told us too, I go, don't be afraid of keeping it flat always. I know a lot of folks, and it's happened here to us. I mean, we lowered for political reasons, and at the end of the day, we're stuck. And I voted for it, and I voted it myself. But now, in hindsight, when I see some of this stuff, I'm like, man, you know what? Let's interesting discussion with Altamont Springs. The other one that was really interesting was smart cities. Coral Gables, what they're doing, it is amazing. Their IT director spoke to us for a long time, and they are way advanced compared to the town of Miami Lakes in terms of what they're using with artificial intelligence and different machine learning. They gave us an example, and they showed us on the screen. They had he's bought up a lot of downtown, really revitalizing it. One of the main things that he told us, and I'll tell all you guys because I thought it was fitting, was you can't get intoxicated with your past success, right? And I think sometimes it even happens to us, where I even hear all the time, well, Don Shula used to live in Miami Lakes. Listen, I wasn't even alive. So it was a great conference. I highly recommend it. There are a lot more things that I went to. I just don't want to be talking for the next 10 minutes on this. But yeah, it was really, really interesting, and it was well worth it going to the Florida League of Cities annual conference. We're on to the next item, which is another report from the town manager.
Yeah, the first report here is for the Canal Bank Stabilization Project, that there was a request to update the council on the status of that project, and Public Works is here to present that status update.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Carlos Acosta, Public Works Director. Give you an update on the Canal Bank Stabilization Project. ATL, the contractor, he's about 50% complete with the project. The current contractual date right now ends at it's at October the 5th. That's so far. Right now we are addressing some issues of washout that happened throughout the project. He submitted we requested from them a change order to address some of those washout and trying to see different methods to strengthen those areas. He provided those. We're negotiating with them the price and some of the dates, extra days on that. So, although the contractual date stands right now October 5th, it might be extended a little bit based on those negotiations of the change order. But he's progressing. Once he gets to 82nd Avenue, and he's ready to kind of take those barges out and move into the other side, he'll come back and work on those washout areas, work on the phase 1 remediation areas that he needed to address, and then he'll move to the other side, which he had already started. He moved to one of the barges on the other side of 82nd and started doing some of the clearing of the bank trees and vegetation. So it's secondary use. That's about it for the update. If I have any questions.
Any questions? Councilman Collazo.
Thank you so much, Mr. Acosta. I know that you guys have been working really hard on this issue. The reason that this item is on the agenda, I believe that another council member requested a report because we've been getting calls, and I don't want to use the word inundated because maybe some people think it's a pun with the whole issue of the washout, but literally been inundated with some of the residents that have been there with calls that were asking us way ahead of time, saying, look, this guy keeps on going and keeps on putting material, but the rain just keeps on washing it out. And now you brought up the issue of change orders which may or may not cost us money. So my question is, the change orders that they're requesting, is it going to create a liability for us?
There is an additional cost. What we talked with the designers, and what we agreed to was we didn't just want to fill those areas back with the same type of fill material. So what we want to do is excavate those areas back and then fill those areas with flowable fill, with concrete, pretty much a type of concrete slurry, so to make it more sturdy so they don't experience washout. What's happening is that when they design these system, the designers expected some sort of overland flow, just typical from the properties. What happens in some of the properties is that water gets concentrated around the fence line because they built up their backyard, so now water, and in those heavy rainfalls that we had where it was just rain was coming at high intensity, then that water tends to concentrate. He went out and put sodding, sodded the areas quickly, but sod takes 2 or 3 weeks to kind of grow roots and kind of stabilize the embankment, so it kind of washed out again because the sod was not. So we hope that once the sod takes roots and we address it with concrete, that those washout areas will be remediated, and it will cost us because that's a different material that we're asking him to put in there, and there's an additional cost.
How much has been reserved in contingency for this project? Do you know right off the top of your head?
I don't have that number on top of my head.
Because I'd be really concerned if now the project starts going over what's budgeted, and then we're going to be placed into a situation where do we find these monies on an issue that at least the residents that were contacting me, well in anticipation, were saying, hey, this is not being done in an optimal manner. Because then I have to face those people and say, you know what, I have to go back into your pocketbook when these people were the ones saying, this is not being done right, this is not being done right, this is not being done right. So I don't know of an issue of maybe shared risk with a contractor. I know you said you're negotiating. I just hate for us to be burned on this, being that I was fielding these calls from the residents saying, hey, don't keep on moving forward with this project until you address this amount of work that's been done so far. And I remember I called you literally on a weekend when I was getting the calls, and you were responding to me, so I appreciate that feedback.
And let me explain it in non-engineer layman's terms. And Carlos, correct me if I say anything that's incorrect. There were 2 reasons why the washout happened. One of the reasons was the contractor's fault, in the sense of he didn't sod fast enough. And under normal circumstances, that caused some washout. And I believe that he's taken responsibility to repair those areas. Some of the other areas are what Carlos described, where people, even from like a drain that people have in their backyard, they have a pipe that's sticking out through the rear wall, and it's a massive concentration of water in one area. It's almost causing like a river effect, and that was an unforeseen circumstance. And I believe, Carlos, those are the circumstances that they're in negotiations with the contract. So it was not any defect in workmanship. It was an unforeseen circumstances, and really at the fault of some things, some of the properties that are along that stretch there east of 82nd Avenue. So I believe that they're on a timeline, right? So it wouldn't have made sense for them to just stop the project just to correct the washout areas. They're tactically, they believe that the best process was to continue all the way until 82nd Avenue and then go back and correct the areas that did have washout, and then do this process with some other type of aggregate that will withstand that concentration of water in one or in a specific area. Does that basically explain it?
Pretty much, Mr. Manager. And when the first washout occurred, the contractor did go out and refilled it and resod it, and that has not been, he took that expense on. So it was just only after that we say, okay, we got to fix it by changing the material in these particular locations. So that's where the change order comes in.
And council member, remember, this is what will happen is we're not going to, other than if it exceeds the contingency, what will happen is we'll just get further down the canal bank. It's not like we're going to come back to ask for more money. So we won't accomplish as much as we had hoped to, but we'll stay within budget on this project.
I got it. That we're not necessarily going to have to dig into our savings account, right, to finish this project. But the reality is we've gone through this exercise. It's going to be the second contractor, right? The first contractor, we tried to mitigate a design flaw, right, because there's voids, right? So we had to go back and fill that first channel up. Now it looks like we're addressing other design flaws. So it's hard going back and telling people, hey, we missed the mark. Hey, we missed the mark. This is the second run at this. I just want to make sure that I know by the end of it we'll be perfect, but if there's anything that the contractor can do to maybe absorb some of this liability rather than and complete the full project. I want it to come in within the contingency part. I want to deliver on what we asked, and I want to deliver the best possible product. So I know you're advocating on our behalf. I know that the contractor's been put on notice. What pains me is having to face the residents and say, hey, look, I told you this was happening. Hey, I told you this was happening. And having to explain, did we or did we not act quickly enough? And from what you said, we've done everything possible. These were unforeseen circumstances, so I hope it falls within that contingency reserve that we set for the project. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Acosta, for the report, and thank you, Mr. Manager.
Vice Chair.
I have one question in reference to what the mitigation. There was two problems, right? One, that he didn't put in the sod in quick enough. The other one was the amount of drainage coming in off the property. Has that been addressed with the homeowner? Because according to the code, you have to have enough ground clearance in your property to maintain the water on your property. So I mean, is that being addressed with the residents to make sure that water flow doesn't come off that property, like you were saying, to damage the?
I know we have discussions with, actually we've had the discussion internally with the building department and the code compliance, and I know we've spoken with the residents as well about that. We've addressed the pipes, which they've been very cooperative to, cut and plug and doing all that. But I think that the first step is addressing, that section and mitigate that, and
Right.
and then slowly address with the residents then on their portion, and maybe do some minor regrading, but that will be something that we can address
Yeah, I mean,
later on to keep the project moving.
Right. If all the water is running off the property, then either they sloped it poorly or something's going on that they're pushing all that water into the canal. And I understand the residents doing it. It's an easy fix for them, to get rid of their water, but it's also, it's damaging, you know, the infrastructure that we're putting in. So it's something that we need to fix with the resident as well, that they're supposed to be pooling that water onto your property, not onto somebody else's.
Yeah,
And I
and,
just wanna-
and we've been addressing them. Obviously, every residence, it's a unique circumstance, right? So some of them have solutions that are, you know, one neighbor may have a problem that's different than the next. So we're addressing them as we come across them, and we're working with code enforcement to address them.
Thank you. And listen, we know how diligent the staff is working, and we know that you guys are always working, and you're the people out there putting in the hard labor, and you know, we're the faces. People call us for the complaints, but we're very grateful to everything that the staff and administration is doing in the town, and thank you, Carlos, and all your staff.
No, and I think these issues just reiterate how difficult it is to fix those canal banks. I mean, we saw it from the first contractor, pretty much gave up, didn't even want to bid on the second. I mean, you would have thought it was a no-brainer for them. So, and now it's the second contractor's having similar issues. So, you know, we're gonna have to tackle it. No, and exactly. It's a tough issue, and even I know some of the residents around there aren't happy because their pipes are getting cut. I mean, I know the county doesn't want them dumping the water into the canal.
No, I think that those pipes are sprinkler pipes taking water out of the canal, no? Or is it both?
Yeah, they're not. I know there's some that push water. Yeah, some are drains and some suck up water.
Right.
Yeah, the ones that suck up water, I don't think are the.
Well, I
are
wasn't
the
aware.
ones.
I wasn't aware that they had pipes into the canal draining as well. Thank you.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I know that's been an issue. But yeah, we're gonna have to continue tackling it. But yeah, this is, and I just want to make a point. This is another project, perfect example of our dependence on state appropriations, because I know it's a state appropriated project. So hopefully it comes to fruition soon. We're not going to go after that. I know west of that portion doesn't really need any canal stabilization. No,
West of...
west of where this one's is ending.
I don't believe so, but we'll assess it once this project's complete and we know where we're finishing.
Got it. Yeah, because I know west of in Lourdes and Palacio, correct me if I'm wrong, but west of 87 it gets difficult because I don't think Durham ever abandoned the right of way. I know they abandoned it east of it. They did, but years ago they abandoned it to the residents.
This project will not make it all the way to 87, and that we knew that going in, regardless of the erosion issue. So what we have to see is in the stretch from where we finish to 87th Avenue, if there's going to be a need for some future project to stabilize the bank.
And that's maybe we got to use something, because I know we're using this one because it gives us more bang for our buck, but there's a different one that uses, I guess, a little white sandbags that it's more concrete, you know. But whatever, we'll tackle those issues one issue at a time. The next one is the line of credit from the manager.
Yeah, and this is a topic that we've had discussions informally, one-on-one. I think it's also been discussed here informally about some future initiative that we were going to bring before you. When Hurricane Dorian was staring us in the face, it kind of accelerated, and we had some internal discussions about this being more of an emergent thing than being able to go long-term. Thankfully, Dorian, spared us, and now we want to bring this before you to have the discussion. Our last experience with a hurricane before this was Irma. We got a very, very glancing blow. We spent over $4 million, and as we've seen with the FEMA reimbursement process, we're now at the 24-month mark, so obviously the process is going to be 24 months plus moving forward. If we were to get hit by a direct hit, or if we were to get hit by multiple storms in a season, or 2 seasons back to back, we're going to suffer a cash flow problem. We're not there yet, but if we were to have multiple storms or a significant storm hit us, and what we want direction from this council is to give us the direction to go out and bring you back a product, a financial line of credit product that will help us get over the hump of having these types of experiences with multiple storms or a big storm. So what we're looking at, it would be some type of a product, and what your expectation should be is we're gonna bring it back and have it tied to natural disasters. We're gonna have it be a product that we don't have to access unless we need it. It's going to be a product that in order to access it, we're going to need to bring it back to this council for authorization to access it. So essentially what we want to do is just have a line of credit in place that if we were to get hit with a significant storm or multiple storms, that we would already have that signed, sealed, and delivered with a financial institution, and then it'll be ready for us to come back to this council for authorization to access it. So what we want to do is we're going to probably have to engage 2 professionals. One is bond counsel, even though this isn't a bond, but it is debt, and we're going to need to engage bond counsel to assist us. And the other one is a financial advisor. We want to be able to search the market and bring back to you the right product. So we want to we're probably going to enlist Estrada Hinojosa, which is the financial advisor that helped us secure the bond for this building. And so it's going to be a contract only to give us advice with regard to securing a line of credit. And what we want is a motion and direction from this council giving us marching orders to go out and do it. And then whatever we find, we'll bring it back to you for approval.
Council, any motions on a line of credit for emergencies?
I'll move to direct staff to go ahead and pursue that option and bring back an ordinance with the appropriate restrictions.
I'll second it.
I had one question.
Yeah. Question.
With
Councilman Rodriguez.
On-
Hey, Councilman Collazo, then Councilman Rodriguez.
Yeah. My question is, if we were to access that line of credit for emergency expenses, would any of the interest that it's accrued on that liability could we get that obligated through FEMA? Or was that something that we would have to pay for out of pocket?
Ismael would be the better expert, but I'm 99% sure that no. That's not something that we can claim as a project to FEMA, the carrying cost of that line of credit.
And how much would it be? How much would this cost? Just a curiosity. I just want to know how much
We don't
the carrying cost.
we don't have that final numbers. We're hoping to be able to find a product that will have no carrying cost or no cost to it. There's one that just in informal research was like $10,000 a year to carry, I think, a $10 or $20 million product. So there's options out there. It's like doing anything, right? When you go out there and you shake the bushes and look for different things, we'll hopefully be able to find something that will be minimal to no carrying cost, but I'm not sure if we're going to be able to find something with no carrying cost. There's probably going to be, more important to us is to have it be a product that you don't have to access, because some line of credits out there in the real world, you have to access a certain amount a year. So that's most important to us, that it not be something that we have to access unless we need it, and that we tie it to disasters. So to do that, there probably will be some carrying cost, but we believe the cost-benefit analysis directs us that we need to have this in place so that if and when we were to get hit with a significant storm or multiple storms, that we'd be ready.
I appreciate that, and my concern is just that the interest that we accrue floating FEMA's debt, we actually then have to absorb. Or is that something that you can obligate back to FEMA? All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Look, with that, to Councilman Collazo's point, and to what Ismael just said, our CFO, rules change, right?
Yes.
A perfect example, when Wilma came around, I think those $700,000 price tag that we owed back to FEMA for some issues there or whatever. City of Hialeah, a bunch of other cities got together, they hired a lobbyist, and lo and behold, they got their stuff waived. And we were one of the few that paid. So you know what I mean? Like, things change. So we just got to do some federal advocacy, work with our congressman, work with our senator. That's something we could tell. Hey, this is an issue. I mean, this for holding off on those dollars. How many years has it been? 2.5 years since 2 years.
2 years
since Irma.
2 years since Irma.
And I know we're going to get paid soon, but we're holding out on them. Exactly, 2 years, crazy, 2 years today.
Can we charge them interest for the money that we've been holding?
So, but think about it, but that, with
Yeah,
that issue, at least them adding that in there to get obligated, that, I think that's, the conversation could be had, because that's an issue that FEMA's gonna have to tackle. You hit it on the head, there's many, many cities that we could partner with.
Turn on the mic as much as.
Mayor, I need a motion to extend.
I'll make a motion to extend to 3 in the morning.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Put it this way, this week we received an email from FEMA, and they just closed, we just got the official letter that they closed the Wilma claim. And they asked us to please keep our records for another 5 years. So that means that we will have a big birthday party here, because it's, 14 years plus another 5, it'll be 19 years old by the time we can get rid of those records, which we won't, because they can always come back. So that's the process that we go through all the time.
It's an issue, and I know, although we do things the right way, and just in Florida, there's close to 500 local governments, including the counties, and there's some that don't do things, so I know that's why FEMA's cracked down.
Yeah, it's a phenomena that's new, right? In the old days, FEMA used to front you the money and then go through the audit process and then ask for money back. The pendulum swung too far to the other side. Now they make you go through the entire federal and state audit process before they give you money. We're over $4 million in claims that have now all been obligated, and yet we've only received $200,000 in actual cash. So I believe that the pendulum at some point will neutralize, and maybe we'll get to the point where FEMA will front local governments 50%, 70%, or something, and have some holdback.
Here, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Manager, but here's an idea. We just did legislative priorities on money and policy for Tallahassee. We should also have legislative priorities for the federal government, where we can work an official, like we vote on. So I know that's something you can work with Ismail on, and you two to come up with the proper language for FEMA. And we can push it with both of our senators, Rick Scott and Marco Rubio, and with our congressmen. But all the time.
Well, we've talked about municipalities having a rating. I mean, we have a rating, and also looking at the CAFR. So I believe that the state and FEMA need to look at the risk of the municipalities, and based on that, give us an advance. So, because there's many ways of looking at, what type of municipality we have, what type of fiscal responsibility, we have. So there are many ways. You have the CAFR, you have the financial advisor that has, all the analysis of our ratings. You have the official ratings. So you can say, you know what, Town Miami Lakes, we have looked at the CAFR for the last 5 years. We're going to rate them an A+, and if something happens, we'll be able to upfront 70% of the claims. And those things, I think that should happen.
So Mr. Manager, can you work with Ismail on that? Send it to me, and I'll talk to the Senator Rubio's and Senator Scott's policy staffers that oversee FEMA to see if they can make an amendment to the upcoming appropriations bills or whatever. Make that request.
Yeah, we'll work on it. And actually, when Representative Mario Diaz-Balart was here, it's something that we discussed with him, that idea of let the pendulum come back a little bit back to neutral, and have some type of if they don't want to advance 100% like they used to, have some type of an advance, and then have some holdback in the event of deobligations. So that's I think the logical approach. And I know that the pendulum swung all the way to not giving any money up front because of abuses of some local governments that obviously don't conduct themselves the way we do. But they used the shotgun instead of the sniper's rifle, and they went after all local governments, and they make everybody pay the price for a handful of bad.
Well, let's formalize that as a formal town position, and I'll go meet with both staffs on that, see if we can pass. Mr. Manager, you think we need a motion, or there's sufficient direction already on this?
No, I mean, I was looking for direction on the line of credit, just to be able to give us the green light to go out to the marketplace and find the right product to bring back to you.
Yeah, there was a motion and a second.
Yeah, there
I
was
think
a motion.
Councilman Rodriguez, you wanted to...
Well, I had the same question as Councilman Collazo about the interest, but obviously it's been answered. I think that's a great idea. It's sort of underwrite the municipalities, like a lender does for a mortgage. They look at your credit score, look at a municipality's record and
Yeah, I
finance it
mean,
ahead of time.
it's just not fair.
Yeah.
If you look at 24 months ago, maybe, I'm going to say 18 months ago, we had started sending all the invoices and all the documentation to FEMA. We have not received $1 rejected from our claims, and we're still here. Everything has been already obligated, so it's almost like, you know, we received a list, I don't know if it was like 6 months ago, of all these municipalities and clients that FEMA has, because it's not only municipalities, you have also school boards and stuff like that, that had not completed sending all the documentation to FEMA. We were not there. So we've done everything right, and we're still, you know, waiting for our money. And I think some of the contacts that you had, or some of the people that you call, they started pushing this out, and that's how now the biggest claims have been obligated. But here's the deal. They've been obligated, and it's been even in the papers, because I think it was Danny that showed me the other day that there was something in Google that said Town of Miami Lakes, $1.9 million. Fact of the matter is, if you look on the state website, FEMA has not paid the state yet for all those millions of dollars. So yeah, there's obligation, but they have not paid the state. That means that the state is not going to pay us. So hopefully that will change in the next 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. I don't know.
Mayor, there's one more thing on the, going back to what Councilman Collazo said about the cost. There's not only a carrying cost when you're talking about these line of credits. I'm in favor of it, but I think what we need to focus on, when you take out a line of credit, there's also origination fees. So we need to try to get the lowest origination fee from the banks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
mean-
that's why it was important to us. I mean, our internal group, Ismael, myself, Tony, when we were discussing it, we were all in agreement that we needed to do this right, and we needed to use the aid of the professionals that I mentioned, so that we can make sure that, because this is the first time as a town that we're going out to a municipal line of credit. So we wanted to make sure that we had the professionals that have done this before, that they
Well-
can give us the right advice and go to the market and help us get the right
I'll
product.
tell you, I'm glad to help. I represent several banks, Northern Trust, Amarant, Sabadell. I mean, I prepare loan documents for lenders all the time. I'd be happy to help you guys, you know, flush out the loan process.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely have a cost, but, you know, we need to minimize it.
So there's a motion on second just on this, and I know there might be another.
I wanted to make an amendment to the motion along some of the discussions that we've been having, which is to start developing a policy as well to address the carrying cost and seeing if there's any way that we can shift some of those costs either through policy back to FEMA. We are floating that debt, and it could create a cash flow issue. I believe that one of the biggest incentivizers is to maybe shift some of that burden over to them. I know that we have a very favorable relationship with Marco Rubio, and seeing if maybe we can work with his policy team to maybe shift some of that burden to FEMA if we were to have to incur debt and additional costs, because we're carrying that debt for them.
I believe that
I'll second that.
the solution to that would probably be legislative, and that could go in line with incorporating that into our federal legislative priority.
I just wanted to make an additional motion to that direction that we were providing on that.
I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Back to the original motion as amended. Any further discussion on that, council? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. We're on to attorney's report.
No, police.
All right.
Oh, town manager monthly police report.
Yeah.
Major.
As usual, I'll keep it brief. Overall, we continue to see a decline in crime. We're down this month significantly in thefts and auto thefts. Once again, your officers are continuing to work diligently. This past month, we saw several different types of arrests made for vehicle burglaries. They were either because our officers were arriving on scenes of in-progress vehicle burglaries and taking subjects into custody, or as part of investigations, follow-up investigations done by our investigators. And a huge amount of that is attributed to our officers working with other agencies. Not only do we work with other districts in providing intelligence back and forth, but we're also been working cases with Hialeah Gardens, Doral, just to name a few, in order to check on different subjects and to pass information back and forth regarding the subjects that we have. This past month, our officers also prepped for the opening of schools, and we're back to conducting our traffic details at the schools and along 154th Street. And the two remaining schools that we were doing school details before are now staffed by school board officers, so we no longer have to staff those. And that's just a quick, brief overview, and I'll open up for any questions that anybody has.
Any LPR success stories this month?
None that spring to mind right now. We continue to utilize them. We did store them for just a bit in preparation for the hurricane, so we brought them in, and we recently put them back out. So.
Any other questions of the, yeah, Councilman Quaz?
Major, just wanted to compliment a team of your officers. I was here on Saturday for mayor office hours and actually bumped into a gentleman. Joseph was just here. He was actually helping the gentleman out. And just wanted to compliment the professionalism and the response. Gentleman was really irate, some ATV traffic or somebody on a motorcycle.
Yes.
And the sergeant did an exceptional job, and the two officers responded to the gentleman's concerns, actually went back out to the scene and provided some additional surveillance. So I just wanted to compliment your officers on that.
Thank you very much, sir.
Did you go out there? No? They don't.
Thank you.
Thank you, Major. Mr. Attorney.
All right, a couple of things. First of all, in the Pizzi matter, today was the oral arguments before the 3rd District Court of Appeal. I would like to give you my impressions and discuss a few issues in an executive session. So please consider this a formal request for an executive session. I'm sure the clerk will line up available dates and times so we can discuss it. The next matter, we are meeting informally with the City Hialeah personnel, their attorneys. I believe it's just an attorneys meeting tomorrow. I'll report to each of you via email. And then the second thing is the 6-month review. 6 months ago, there was a major switch in the services that my law firm provides to the town. We agreed to take a minimal increase in our fees in exchange for a substantial change in dedication of services. At that time, we discussed that we would review it in 6 months. It's important to us. We're going to be requesting the increase that we had talked about at the time of $25,000. And we're hoping that you will agree to it. It is important to us. We want to continue to provide quality service, but it's something that has to make business sense for the law firm as well as for the town. I think the town's getting a pretty good deal. They've got someone full-time plus my time, and when you take into account the amount of services that we're providing, it's something that needs to make sense for both sides. So we're requesting, in accordance with the presentation that you're about to see, an increase of $25,000 in our services. I don't want to have any issues. You are obviously free to consider hiring an outside law firm to review what we're proposing for you to review about us. I want to make that perfectly clear. You always have that option. And if you decide to do that, that's fine with us. But I think you'll be the ones who need to decide whether you want to incur the expense of something like that. But without further ado, Lorenzo, please take over.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Mr. Manager, the presentation is very simple. I've discussed most of this with this issue with most of you. I've been here in Town Hall for the last 6 months. During that time, I've put in over, I don't know, I counted roughly about 1,200 hours. Most of that time is dedicated to these meetings, is dedicated to special call, is dedicated to fielding and doing legal research, is preparing ordinances and preparing resolutions. But besides that, a significant amount of my time has been also dedicated to assisting Natalie in the procurement, especially at the very beginning when she was onboarding. And anytime that any legal issue really comes up with any review of any contracts that we have for the town. Also, a significant amount of time is dedicated to building and any issues with land use and working with Susanna, and at the same time also working with code enforcement. Additionally, I've expended a good amount of time helping out community and outreach and the different committees. I've assisted Public Works, and I've also, out of my own pocket, I have attended every single CLE that I could possibly attend, from the FMAA conference to a land use conference last month in the city of Tampa, and also attending FDOT trainings to assist with our different FDOT projects and making sure that we remain as a city certified. At this time, I've made myself, I think that the city, I believe that the city has saved monies in being able to use my service. Some of the items that we used to charge on a per hour basis, I kind of did a rough calculation. It would have been somewhere in the ask of about $33,000 as far as special items. But what are those special items? The police contract. We worked, both Tony, the manager, and I, especially at the very beginning on that. MLOP is another contract that we're very close to finalizing as well. There's been some litigation in which, including the ADA complaint, rehab center opt-out agreement with regards to Opa-locka Airport that has not been passed on as any additional charges to the town. Additionally, as I mentioned before, because of some of the things that have been going on in town, some of my time has shifted to assisting other departments and providing support and to some extent oversight. I hope you are all happy with the services I've provided. I think all of you, anytime that any of you have reached out to me, I think I've been as responsive as I possibly can. Whether it's Saturday, Sunday, I'm in Asheville, I'm wherever I'm at. I believe I try to always put you guys first. And we're just simply asking for is the 25 that we had originally asked, and that was going to be reviewed after a 6-month period.
So
I'm open to
I'll
questions.
break the ice, because I know I had pushed this issue before. I know we had said I'm fine with it. I see the value that having somebody in-house full-time, not only me, but from staff. I mean, I've heard it continuously from staff, how they like the change, how it's been positive. And the other thing is, one of the reasons why I pushed hard on not bringing back the $60,000 procurement specialist position was because of having Lorenzo here. I really don't believe that position, even when we get back to normal years, that position, in my view, is not needed, right? I think just with our current procurement manager and with Lorenzo supporting is more than sufficient. And I know even Danny Angel helps out in that department a lot. That's one of the reasons why I'm okay with this. The other one of the questions I've seen the value myself, and I've heard it from all the departments. Have you completely eliminated, winded down your law firm and your practice?
My firm, for the most part, has consolidated with Gastesi. At this time, really on my own, no. I mean, anything that we do, we work, and there is an associate that Mr. Gastesi hired. That's most of the cases that I had, she's attending to. So my concentration is first and foremost here.
Winding down a law firm or transitioning a law firm takes
it's been
time.
a pain.
So I just want to repeat it one more time. I'm okay with this because I've seen the value, not only personally, but I've seen it and I've heard it from different people at Town Hall, department heads, staff. Everybody really likes this hybrid approach, right? Where it's still a contract service that if we're not happy with, it's an evergreen, right? That we can eliminate whenever. And at the same time, that position, that procurement position that I know at one point was being planned for, and again, I push hard to not bring it back because of having Lorenzo here. There's no value and even in the future having that position coming back, because I think that's something that he's put in here that he picks up a lot of the slack with that. So that's just my thoughts. I'd love to hear from the rest of you guys, because we all have different perspectives how the inner workings of the town is, but those are the two main reasons. A, staff has told me, and I've seen it myself, the value, and B, as long as that, I don't want to see that position then next year come back, hey, no, you needed to get, no, then there's an issue. But as long as that's the scenario, I think it's more, you see the value is absolutely there. Council, anyone else?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Dieguez.
I just want to state, since I was I believe the lone no vote at the time when this came up, that, you know, that opposition was rooted in my opposition to a slow drift on having an in-house legal department, which I think invites a variety of problems. But I do support what they're asking for tonight. I think that it is merited, not only just in terms of the work that Lorenzo's put in, but also just in terms of equitable pay. Obviously, a lot of people always hate paying attorneys' fees, but, you know, it's a necessary thing, because you pay attorneys for two things: their knowledge and the time in which they spend applying that knowledge to whatever issue it is that you have. And I believe that, just like with any other position, you need to pay them what they're worth. And so I think that Gastesi, Mestre, and Lopez have shown that they're worth it. I'm more than fine with giving, again, not so much Lorenzo the raise, but the firm the raise. You know, I want to be clear that that's what we're doing here. Because I myself, the idea of bringing a true in-house legal department to fruition for various reasons. But, you know, great job, Lorenzo. I do think you've done great work.
Thank you.
And again, I'm supportive of what you guys are asking for. Thank you.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add is, as you know, and many of you went, we formed a partnership with former Vice Mayor and Councilman Cesar Mestre, and with Raul Lopez. My firm, Gastesi Associates, technically still exists and will exist, but I would like to be able to bill it through that firm, if that's not objectionable to anybody here. I don't think it makes a difference to the town, but it's something that it would make it easier for us in terms of billing while I close the other firm down.
Does that require an amendment?
I could put it in a letter, in the letter agreement that says we're changing the fees and that we are going to be doing it through the new firm, if that's acceptable to you guys.
Vice Mayor, and then we'll just, let's go through the discussion, then we'll make a motion.
No, I listen, at the end of the day, the town has progressed nicely. We haven't had any issues. Our legal team has been amazing with everything that we've had. I know there's been a lot of naysayers throughout the last 2 years, but I mean, we've progressed legally in a great, we have great leadership there right now. And the town has had no legal implementations of any issues that we had brought. We have the PISI issues. We continue to be successful there. So you have to look at the big picture of what it takes. I think it's a great hybrid. You have an in-house attorney, and you know he goes through a firm, and we can dispose of it at any time. I don't see a reason to dispose of it. I am very happy with the response we've gotten, and I too have heard from people in the staff that they're happy with the quick response of having somebody there. Not to knock other attorneys, but for years, you know, we had an issue of getting attorneys on the phone and getting things done and getting, you know, the agenda done, and it's midnight and it's 1 o'clock in the morning and the agenda still wasn't done. You know, this brings a whole new dynamic, and I think things have flowed smoothly. If it's a question of funding, Mr. Manager, is that an issue? Do we need to?
No, I mean, obviously, any penny that we spend is an issue, right?
Right.
So we'll add it to the 23 that we had from earlier tonight.
Can we just take it
And-
out of the legal
Yeah,
fund that we
I
have?
thought there was $25,000 in there that we were shifting over.
That was already done the last time.
No.
There's monies in the litigation reserve that's possible.
Right.
Or wherever else you identify, Mr. Manager.
The
Doesn't-
litigation, in our previous plan, the litigation reserve was slated to be left at 342, which is what I explained to each of the council members. So give us an opportunity to take a look at it, but we'll bring it back with at the second reading of the budget and fund it.
Yeah, I think that in the 342, there's more than enough money there to budget that. I don't want to see, I don't think we need to start looking at other accounts. The mayor believes that the 25 is already in there in the budget somewhere. He's diligently working on that now. But
There was, the last time that this issue was discussed, there was 25,000 from Nancy Stroud.
Nancy Stroud.
And that amount was transferred
Right.
6 months ago when
Right.
this was being debated.
Okay.
So that amount was already allocated towards the first 25,000. So we'll handle this. We'll work this
Yeah.
out and we'll bring it back
Yeah,
to
but
you.
don't add it to the 32.
23.
No, it's 32. No, it's
23.
33.
Oh.
33. 23 for the council and 10 for the special needs committee. All right, let's show it to the manager. Either way, thank you, Lorenzo. Thank you, Raul.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
For the services. I mean, it's very dynamic to see, bring that firm in together as a whole.
Thank you.
The 25,000 I was talking about is in the proposed budget for this upcoming year, that it says litigation expenses for the town attorney. That's outside of the other fund, and it says $25,000.
You're getting a nod over there. Finances.
Any further discussion on this, council?
So is there a motion necessary or no?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Then I'll move to, I guess it would be to amend the contract with Gustesi and Associates so that payments are filtered through the new partnership, which is Gustesi, Mestre, and Lopez, and also to increase the, I believe it's a retainer, by $25,000.
Per year.
I will second.
Is there a second?
Repeat the motion, please.
Yeah.
It's to pay through the new partnership and to add the $25,000 to the retainer.
To pay through the new partnership. Okay, yeah. You second it? Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes.
Thank you all very much.
Anything else?
I was getting up. Yeah, right? Yeah.
Guys, I also...
No, that's it.
I mean, council, sorry for calling you guys. I also wanted to let you know that this Saturday, and I welcome all of you to attend, for the last almost 10 years now, I would say, I've been helping with a senior symposium for the Elderly Affairs Committee, and we're doing it again this year. We have several panelists that are going to be there, and of course, our Elderly Affairs Committee is sponsoring it. So I invite all of you to attend. It's a wonderful event. Thank you all.
Mayor,
Yes.
one last thing before, are you about to adjourn?
Yes.
One last thing, which is I need to recognize the town staff for 2 endeavors that they're related, but they're two separate things. One was the response in preparation for Hurricane Dorian. They went above and beyond. They performed admirably. Obviously, we didn't get hit, but our staff in their preparation, in the coordination of the EOC on that Friday and Saturday, I think that has to be recognized. And lastly is the town staff, and mostly out of Claricel's shop, the people that were involved, Willie and his group, that were involved in the coordination of the relief effort for the relief supplies to the Bahamas. I mean, it was incredible what they did, and I have to recognize them. I know hopefully they'll be able to hear it tomorrow on the recording, but I think that we all owe them a debt of gratitude. They really made the town look incredible.
Good. They're all up watching right now. So how you doing, guys? I'm sure. They're here. Yeah, they're here. They're here. Well, no, thank you all. Have a good night. Good job. God bless, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. This meeting is adjourned.